All right, what's good, boys? It's your boy No Name. Let's get right into it real quick. There's some new information today. Today we got gem info. Hell yeah. All right, so I'm gonna cover all this, go over through the gems because I had some thoughts. You guys can check out my previous video when I talked about some of the gems as they were announced. And even I think in the patch notes I went over some of the ones that I thought could be more interesting. But now we have all the gem data in front of us, so let's get right into it. Starting off hot. Yeah, starting off hot. Controlled blaze support. We're rocking a lot of numbers on this, honestly. Each supported skill does percent more damage, 14% more damage with Ignite for each inflicted Ignite, and less damage for each inflicted Ignite. And so this was a lot of math that I had to do to figure it out like myself. And what I came to is it's nuts. How nuts, you ask? All right, so here's a chart. Here's a chart for how nuts it's looking. You've got, this is the number of stacks until it starts to get worse. At 27 stacks of a controlled blaze, you are literally reducing your damage, but so you just don't go that far up. What you'll notice is that there's this yellow range here, starting at 1.4 and ending at 1.45. And in this range, you're already better than most supports in the game, but you're especially nuts if you're in this 9 to 16 range. And so what that really means is, if we're talking about within the time period of recently is 4 seconds, which means if you're somewhere in the ballpark of about 3 attacks per second, it would have consistent uptime. Like, you're gonna have some really nice and beefy ignites out of it. Probably air on the side of like 3.5, 4, just to make sure you don't you don't get cut by boss patterns and whatnot. But this is gonna be a really good effect. But even you can see, even at 5, it's really good, and even honestly at 4, I'm not complaining too much. So a lot of strong space here. Very good support. Very much exceeded my expectations. I was expecting about a 49 to 54% support. I also just want to talk about design wise for the controlled blaze. I like the way that they did this because it basically, if you're curious like why this is working so jankily, it's because I think they were trying to strike a balance where like faster ignite skills could have a space to live, or faster like weapons, right? Because like it's really easy to think ignite and immediately think big bonk two-hander ice crash, for example, which like is one way to play it, but you still want to be able to offer faster options as well. And so making it so that the support actually scales with your investment into speed a little bit without getting out of hand is one way to do that. I'm a huge fan of controlled blaze. This is a huge buff to the. If you see me on stream recently, I've been working on Infernal Blow Ignite, which I saw that there was like a take on it from MBX Stream. I'm gonna take a little bit from inspiration from his, but I think he kind of went about it the wrong way for how much investment he put into it. I've got some stuff that I'm going to cook up and put in. And I'll probably release at least like the full idea to you guys in a video before league starts so you guys can play around with it a little bit. But unfortunately, it won't be my league starter. But I have some because I have another plan going on, which we'll talk about that soon too. But yeah, Controlled Blaze coming right out the gate hot with a good support. Next up, we had Corrupting Cry support. This is the one where you do a war cry and applies corrupting blood to enemies. So the important things to note here are that it does 600 base phase damage per second, and that the war cry applies 4 debuffs, which this makes this a very solid clear skill, right? 600 base phase is about 55% stronger than Corrupted Fever, for example, which is a very common clear speed build that people play. And so in theory, that's pretty good. And applying 4 buffs at once or debuffs at once when you do the war cry out of 10 is very nice. Now here's where the things get kind of worse for me. 20% less AoE means that like your clear on the war cry itself is kind of a little bit gimped, and I don't love that, but I understand the reasoning. The one that really kills this support for me is supported war cries inflict corrupted blood on the first enemy hit by each attack they exert. That part, like, it's so close to being good. It's so close, but the problem is that if you can only do it on one enemy per attack you exert, it means that you can't use something like Blade Storm to stack it up quickly on a boss. You cannot use something like Earthquake to quickly apply it to enemies, or Earthquake, or like imagine like Seismic Cry plus Earthquake with this, for example, right? Just like as a quick example, could have had some real potential. So really like toss the clear speed of this type of setup through the roof, or again Blade Storm for single target, whatever it may be. And so I think this is kind of lame in that regard. It does have a better base duration than actual Corrupted Blood, though. Corrupted Blood from Corrupting Fever is only 1 second long, and this is 2 seconds. So overall, my evaluation of Corrupting Cry has potential, And it probably is good. It just the things that I was looking for it to be good at, not super in my wheelhouse. Also, I have to point out the 1,000 cost in reservation multiplier, but I think that has mostly to do with the fact that war cries actually do just have low life costs or low cost by default. Somebody should double check. I can double check that, put it in the description or something, but like it's not. I believe it's just because they're low cost by usual. But it will make them pretty expensive to press on any regular frequency. So kind of lame. I wish I did a little bit better with this one. Flamewood support. This one surprised me. I think when I saw this when they announced it at Exile Con, I thought Flamewood support was going to be mid. Like honestly, mid is probably putting it nicely. I thought this support was going to be pretty bad. Um, and I am pleased to sit here and tell you today that I was wrong. Like 137% of the totem's maximum life as base fire damage for these meteors that I assume can be scaled both through the percentage or realistically through the life of the totem. So for perspective on why I think this could have real potential, explode totems were, I believe it was 600%. Now that's a lot more than 137, but this doesn't require the minion to die, and it mostly provides as like a defensive option. So I do think you might see some boss killing builds with this setup for fun. Where I would look at Flamewood being good is in Heist. Heisters already run very low damage, high speed setups that are just using like a taunting totem to keep themselves alive. Um, with Flamewood, you now have a way to actually like kill things that are real problematic in the process. So I wouldn't be surprised if this became a pickup for like high speed heisters with just a little bit of totem life scaling somewhere to add a little bit more damage to like you're gonna get kind of like a lab runner. Like if you don't know, like lab runners, they get just enough damage to kill things with nothing more than that. So there's some potential there. Guardian's Blessing support. Um, this is just better blessing. I read this and my entire thought was, wow, we were just power creeping Divine Blessing. Like they have a cost, I guess, to use. And you have to have the minion up to do it. I want to know actually as like a weird thing, do I have to cast the minion and the blessing, or can I cast one? Hopefully it's one. But I just you never know. But assuming that you either way, with a minion up, you get an aura that has 32% increased aura effect instead of only 19 from Divine Blessing. The downside here is how hard it actually is to keep that minion alive. 14.3% per second is as fizz damage is a lot because you're just pretty much looking for sources of generic PDR, right? It can't even be armor. It needs to be generic PDR or damage over time resistance for your minions, which is a little bit scarce of a stat. And like it also means that they have any or sort of ES access for whatever reason. It makes it even harder to keep them alive. Through like vitality and some nodes on Tremont, you can extend this a decent bit. But I foresee most characters that use this just using it as a quick 7-second blessing that doesn't cost them their ES or force them into energy into Divine Blessing, plus or specifically EB in order to facilitate their blessings. That's what I see this support being used for. Related to this thought though, is that if you're an aura bot, for example, like this is perfect. This is a free aura for you. And like you can keep it alive through your own Giga Juice Vitality, especially if you're looking at any either Guardian or an Ascendant taking Guardian, the increased life recovery rate from your auras stacked on top of the stacked on top of the effective vitality. Like you could definitely put some work in there, and I think like replenishing presence is still a thing. Like you could really put some behind your healing for your minion, so it really gets that duration. Good effect, a good gem. Honestly, kind of broken. Probably nerfed in 323. Trauma support. All right, here's another banger right here, baby. I hope you like damage. I hope you like brain damage because this support is good. This is the good type of brain damage. You never thought you were gonna hear those words, right? Good brain damage. We like this. It unfortunately does not work with Bone Shatter, which does defy like my one wish when I saw this announced. So I was really hoping it would let it be usable with Bone Shatter. But I guess it makes more sense to just not have it work with Bone Shatter than permanently nerf and force trauma support onto Bone Shatter. And have it be on two adjustable knobs at the same time. But that said, for everybody else that's melee and uses axes, maces, scepters, and staves, yes, 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 yes. I would keep an eye on specifically skills like Frostblades, Molten Strike. I think even like um you might even see something like kind of weird with Static Strike come up because it is actually a strike. um I like some math on these types of things has to be done, right? Lightning strike potentially, who knows? But like I would expect to see something really potent come out of Bone Zone players who've been looking for a way to not play Fizz melee this whole time, or just to get better clear speed. Um, Especially because you're not actually reliant on stunning enemies anymore, right? Like you still have stun scaling if you need to do it, but you are no longer reliant through stun on this method. So I think there's some potential here. There's also probably an implication on this for any of the ignite setups that are coming around, right? We talk about like I ignite infernal blow that I've been thinking about with controlled blaze and whatnot. There's some potential there, but I haven't looked too far into that. I'm mostly looking at the frostblade stuff, for example, but I haven't sat down and really ran through that idea too much yet. When I finish running through my idea dump, one of my videos coming up before the league, so it's just going to be dumping a series of ideas that are cool and worth looking into for your league start or an early reroll. If you've already settled on your league start, but that'll be later on. Back to the gems. Trauma support, good. Volatility, good. This is mostly an ailment support though. I was doing some math on the volatility induced by the numbers on this gem, and I find that the the range is too flippant for a character reliant on hit damage. And while it'll still end up being a net positive on your damage, you're not gonna feel as good about using it as an ailment build, right? Because the thing about volatility is, so when you use a range like this, we talk about like Resolve Coil, for example, the belt that already does this in the game. It was good for Fizz melee, but oftentimes you see people opt for a regular belt instead, just because you do actually feel those lows. But if you're an ignite build, let's say you've already rolled like 85% of your maximum damage on one of your hits, when that next hit is at the bottom of the bottom, you don't feel that. You only like your damage doesn't change, right? And so that's what makes volatility good for dot builds. It just like it creates a little bit more fishing, but you don't feel the negatives when they hit. So overall, very good space for dot. And this is like I plugged this into my bleed bow character from this previous league or from Crucible League, and it was about an 8 to 10% damage increase over my gear. So, or I think I had Awakens with Affliction support in there. So, if you are playing a bleeder ignite build, yeah, volatility looking pretty good. Might get nerfed in the future league, sadly. Locust Mine support. So I'm gonna be real with you. This is the one that I don't have a real opinion of yet, and it's mostly because there's this one line in here. There's a lot of lines on this gem, right? This is a lot of reading, first of all. But the line that I want to point your attention to is mines from supported skills can't be detonated while within a radius 30 of you. This completely kills the support for me as far as I'm concerned. It's just such a clunky restriction to have in there. In addition to the weird throwing pattern and the nerf to projectiles and whatnot, can't be used with melee this only for bows and stuff. The real kick for me is that your mines, according to this gem, always target you when you detonate them, and you can't detonate these things when you're too close to them. Like that's really stupid. Um, it's a real like there's always potential if this actually turns out to be really good, but it's just I looked at this and I thought that the playstyle would be awkward, weird, convoluted. But maybe I'm wrong and there's some high potential here. I would love to be wrong about that, but it's just that I don't love the sound of what I read there. Numerically it seems fine though. Losing 30% projectiles is mostly a nerf to just like skills like barrage support, for example. Um But you know, if you're using like single projectile skills or even just stuff like like random arrows, sort of, kind of, or even just like KB, Frenzy, whatever it may be. Oh my bad. They all are kind of okay with the penalty. As long as you only really need to hit one projectile, you hit one projectile on 3 mines thrown at a time, doing 10% less damage. Like, this is going to work out net positive damage wise. I'm just concerned about the clunkiness of the playstyle. Returning projectile support. This is really simple. Venture Cascade died for this. This is a 39% more damage support. That's all there is to it. This is fine. This is a good support. Before I leave for returning, actually, I'm just glad to see that this is like now a function available for like more spells as well. Because I do think that this opens up some stuff that's just pretty cool. For example, you might see ball lightning with this. Just in terms of how it affects what stats you need to scale. Or, you know, I'm a big fan of looking at, like, I want to see like freezing pulse with this. Just for the clear speed, it would look beautiful, right? There's gonna be some potential here for things to just be good because this is a good support. 39% damage as long as you get okay with it coming back to do the rest of its damage. That's all there is to that. Sadism support. So if you saw my tease when this was teased, I kind of said that I thought this support sucked. I stand by that pretty wholeheartedly. When I was plugging it into some of my POBs that I already have, I was losing between 8 and 15% DPS. And it was mostly because of the average cases, right? It kind of ruined. So sadism has a world where it can be useful, and it's the idea that you get the full damage out of your failed fishes anyways, and then your good ones just do damage instantly. I think sadism has a place on like a clear skill, like split arrow and a bleed bow setup. If you're like running Arma Ignite and like a fireball and like a fire trap setup, it might have a place there, maybe. But I am really low on this less duration of ailments inflicted with supported skills effect. Maybe there's some stuff when we talk about like when you freshly shock, chill, ignite, bleed, whatever. There's a number of effects that trigger on ailmenting a target that didn't have that ailment on it prior. And so maybe there's some world where that opens up a possibility with sadism, but as it stands, not very high on this support. Next up, Devour support. No, don't you fucking use this. If you're watching my video and you decide to put Devour support in, I'm just taking it as you didn't listen. You just don't listen to me. Why are you here? No, I'm kidding. I love you, but like, don't use this support if you care about your build. This support is bad. Fresh meat support. All right, so this is one of the fun ones that I need some more time to cook with, and by I mean my friends. My friend is thinking about some stuff. The buff is really good. Almost 4% base crit, almost 70 crit multi, and adrenaline for up to 10% of the duration is a ridiculous amount of buff to get for being freshly summoned. Now, the kick here is the duration. And so that's where the cooking is kind of kicking in. We were talking around like the idea of maybe like, oh yeah, you could freshly summon SRS and they'll get this bonus. But SRS has to travel from you to the target first of all. And more importantly, well, the duration is actually not that ridiculous. Like, you only get like 4 or 5 seconds of this buff. And so if you're thinking about it as a DPS thing, you'd be constantly resummoning. And you're basically just playing a caster. So the things we're looking at are maybe like Skellies, because you can summon multiple of them at a time. And so maybe that alleviates this concern. The other one that really stood out to us is thinking about Animate Weapon. Animate Weapon has a really high base duration. And so maybe with some scaling, you could actually make it playable this way as well. But we need to do some more testing and number crunching before we can, like, I can tell you that I think it's a good idea. I'm mostly putting it out there so you know it is an idea, right? Frigid Bond support. GGG, you are a temptress. Let me tell you. So, buddy of mine and I, outside of my actual League Star plans, we were talking about at some point playing Frigid Bond characters when we just saw it fresh announced at ExileCon. And as patched at the camera, we always said, you know, if the numbers on Frigid Bond come out good, we will play this. We are going to be playing this. This base damage number is about 50% higher than any other cooldown skill that is not Wintertide brand. And it is only not that high relative to Wintertide brand if you factor in Runebinder. So that means that Frigid Bond is an absurd amount of base damage. The only downside to this compared to other cold dot skills is that it does not scale as easily with gem level because of the fact that, you know, when I say gem level, I'm talking about as in like the literal, like you have to have plus socketed. You don't get benefits from like +1 all skills on Ashes of the Stars or +1 all spell skill gems from your wand. Like that doesn't affect Frigid Bond, so that's kind of unfortunate. It's kind of one of the things that griped me about scaling Impending Doom this previous league as well. But you can always put it in like a +2 cold stick or something like that, right? So there's potential. It's going to be worth experimenting with. It's going to be funny. And I like that they added in the linger on this. Adding in the 2-second linger just solves one of my bigger like concerns with the quality of life of the setup. Where like if you and your friend need to dodge around some shit awkwardly, whatnot, what will happen? That's what will happen. The damage will linger for 2 seconds. So this is going to be fun. I don't know when I'm going to play it, but I'm going to do it. Sacrifice support. I am not very high on this. And I think maybe it's just because I've been burned enough by looking at this type of effect. Actually, okay, that's not true. Because when Forbidden Rite came out, I called that it would be nuts on totems. But no, this is before I was making videos though. I was just like in the PoE Discord talking shit with some friends, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this is nuts with totems. And we ran the numbers, and we're like, oh, this is nuts with totems. And then people played the build, and they were like, no, this is nuts with totems, right? There's potential for Sacrifice to do that with totems as well here. In fact, I think it might be the only way to make this support work. I think as a person, sacrificing 20% of your life is ridiculous. It is only current life though, so it can't kill you. And it might interact a little bit more favorably with like a low life setup, but I'm not super sure. I'm not willing to put a whole lot of eggs in that basket just yet because I haven't sat down and ran the numbers on it. But I know that totems, like maybe with totems, you could get somewhere with this. But it does mean that like each following cast gets a little bit weaker. It'll be interesting to see if this actually works. I'm not super high on it, but I could totally see a world where this does like do better. But like again, like I'm not super high on it. Like, like it feels like a waste of a support for me. But like also, I could do like my whole little tirade. I won't do it in this video. If you want me to do this tirade, let me know, and I'll think about it for another time. Or maybe just stop by the stream and like have me do it there. But I am not a fan of how little chaos hit support there actually is in the game between affixes on gear and actual nodes on the tree, as well as even some ascendancy options for relative to the proximity of the nodes. Like chaos hit damage is just such an under supported part of the game. Because obviously they're just so worried about their right flank in poison damage scaling, and it's just like I wish they would do so much more in that field. Anyway, sacrifice, maybe, but like we'll see. And Spellblade support. So if you watch my video, I said that 160 was the number I needed to see in order for this to be good for elemental setups. I see 135, I'm not sold. However, for Fizz spells, I think this is good, especially Fizz Poison. So, Poison BV players, this is for you. If you're a Stormburst enjoyer, or if you're like a fan of like Stormburst or Divine Iron and whatnot, I would also keep an eye on this support for your build. Because again, you don't need as high of a number as elemental builds because percent damage or flat damage scaling for your build is just kind of scarce. So those are my two like things that I would think about, but other than that, I am not super sold on this item existing on this support. And that kind of covers all the changes because everything else in here gem wise is just like changes to the gems we already knew about from reading patch notes. The only other thing that got announced today is that we also have the tooltips for Guardian. Which I'm just showing these here so you know. I have some brief thoughts on these. Elemental Relic is kind of cool, but a bit weak for a 4-player given its conditional status. And the fact that like you can't actually build around the bombing aspect because it's going to be spawning relic. It's going to keep refreshing if you do it wrong, and you can't really affect its duration any. So you're just going to be stuck with like auras, which I would like to know the level of these auras, by the way. And Sentinel of Radiance is a 2-pointer that is entirely defensive. So also kind of lame. I would have liked a little bit of damage potential from the 2-pointer, but like that's that, you know. So those are the things that we got today. It's been a really impactful day for announcements. If you're coming by the stream anytime between now and league start, it's gonna be me practicing for league start or me talking about stuff for league start. As you know, that's right around the corner. I've got a couple more videos coming out for you guys. So like, you know, this video is one part of it. I'm gonna talk some stuff about Atlas. I'm gonna talk about I'm gonna have a video talking about builds from last league that I think would still be pretty good and pretty easy to play through this league, as well as some ideas that I think you could cook with if you're interested in cooking going into this league. And then I will have my own video talking about my plans for this league start, what build I'll be playing, what I'm going to transition to, what my Atlas strategy is going to be like. We're going to kind of walk you through the top level of what I think it's going to look like and all that. And then, I mean, by that time, I think we'll just be at league start, right? I probably won't post any of my practice on here just because I'm too embarrassed for that. If I'm being honest, that's not what I'm good at. I'm practicing for a reason, right? But if you want to see any of the practice, come by to Twitch. We'll be live tonight, tomorrow. We'll be live Monday night, Thursday, Tuesday night, Thursday. I don't go live on Wednesdays, like you'll see in the description. I'm live most nights, just never on Wednesdays. I have a work commitment that kind of prevents that. Other than that, though, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.